Hello and welcome. I'm Kathy Frankel, Vice President for Exhibitions and Collections at the National Building Museum in Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us for this important program. We're glad to have you with us tonight. For those of you who may not know about us, the National Building Museum strives to inspire curiosity about the world we build for ourselves through our groundbreaking exhibitions and programs. The museum has been exploring the built environment, those places where we live, work, and play for nearly 40 years. While most of our focus has been on buildings and landscapes, we've also explored the equally important role that memorials have in our environments, from recognizing significant people and achievements to honoring tragedies and lives lost. We are together now during National Gun Violence Survivors Week to collectively share and amplify the stories and voices of gun violence survivors who live with the impact of gun violence every day of the year. And part of that sharing includes this program, which is focusing on the Gun Violence Memorial Project, a memorial to the thousands of Americans taken by gun violence every year. That memorial will be on view at the museum when we open to the public in the coming months. Conceived by Mass Design Group and conceptual artist Hank Willis Thomas in partnership with gun violence prevention organizations Purpose Over Pain and Everytown for Gun Safety, the Memorial Project is being presented in conjunction with Justice is Beauty, a retrospective exhibition on the work of mass design. I was struck when we had a call to prepare for tonight's program and Annette, one of our panelists tonight, spoke about seeing Mass's incredible Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama, and how it inspired her to approach Mass's founding principal, Michael Murphy, about creating a memorial to remember victims of gun violence. Similarly, this memorial and the accompanying exhibition came to be at the National Building Museum because I was lucky enough to visit Montgomery with some museum colleagues and was also struck by the power of that memorial. And on learning more about Mass and their approach to design with a focus on health and healing, a call was made to Michael Murphy to inquire whether the firm would be interested in partnering with the museum to create an exhibition. So it feels like there's some synergy here that brings us together tonight. That and Michael's willingness to answer the phone and jump into new and challenging projects. Before we get started, I want to recognize how painful this topic is and how hard it will be to hear the stories of lives taken. And we encourage your participation. Please submit your questions via the Q&A button on your Zoom dashboard, and we'll do our best to answer during our time together. It is now my pleasure to welcome our program's moderator, Jha D Williams. Jha D is a senior associate at Mass Design Group and project manager for the Gun Violence Memorial Project. The museum thanks her and our panelists for participating in this program tonight. Please join me in welcoming Jha D.
Hello, Kathy. Thank you so very much for such a warm welcome and an overall introduction. I'm sure it goes without saying that it is an honor and a privilege and a huge responsibility to be here tonight. So I'm certainly excited about that. On behalf of Mass Design Group, the larger design team, and all that have contributed in very meaningful ways to this project, I want to welcome you all tonight to this conversation, of course, one which we hoped to be able to have in person at the National Building Museum there in Washington, D.C. during this year's National Gun Violence Survivors Week. However, we are still honored to be able to be coming into your homes and into your lives tonight as friends, fellow survivors, and advocates, all who are committed to telling the stories of loved ones with the aim of preventing more lives being impacted by the gun violence in our country. Our hope is that by telling these stories, your stories, our stories, via the process of remembrance, we can end the gun violence epidemic in America together. So again, welcome. My name is Jha D Williams. I am a senior associate from Mass Design Group and the project manager for the Gun Violence Memorial Project. Today, I am honored to be joined by our memorial partners, Pam Bosley and Annette Nance-Holt, co-founders of the organization Purpose Over Pain, as well as Debbie Weir, senior managing director for organizing and engagement from Everytown for Gun Safety. Before we get started, I want to also thank the National Building Museum for hosting us and the Gun Violence Memorial Project, which traveled from Chicago, where it was unveiled in 2019, to be in DC. as well as our sponsor, Everytown for Gun Safety, the largest gun violence prevention program in the country. I'd also like to uplift our design partners from the studio of Hank Willis Thomas, who regretfully could not join us today, but continue to advance this project with us. In March, we do hope that individuals will be able to safely tour the exhibit in Washington, D.C. at the museum, which is presented in conjunction with an exhibition on the work of mass design group called Justice is Beauty. So with that, I would like to share my screen so that you all do have some visuals to support the conversation that we will be having this evening. And in doing so, I'm going to invite first Pam, and then Annette, and then Debbie to introduce themselves to you all. And in those introductions, talk a little bit about the work that they do through their organization. So Pam, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Yes, thank you, Jha D. And first of all, I want to say welcome to all those that's on the line this evening. We truly appreciate you coming in and listening. So my name is Pam Bosley. I'm from Chicago. My son, the reason I'm in this project is my son, Terrell Bosley, at the age of 18, was shot and killed on the grounds of a church, a place that should have been safe. His life was taken with a .45 caliber, and Terrell was my oldest son. He loved living. He loved laughing. He loved reading. He loved going to school. He loved things that young people love to do. He loved music. He loved playing the drums and, the bass guitar. And he loved being my son. I loved being his mom. And he was an older brother. He loved doing all those things. But on April 4th, 2006, on the grounds of a church, someone took his life, and it was 2006, and it still hurts to this day for me to talk about my baby, my son, because he still should be here. And that first year in 2006, I tried to take my life twice because it wasn't no support groups there for me, and it just hurted. The pain hurted so bad. So in 2007, what brings me, I just want to kind of talk a little bit about Purpose Over Pain. We started, Annette, myself, and some more people, we started a group called Purpose Over Pain. And the reason we came up with Purpose Over Pain, because we knew that God had a purpose for our life over our pain. So one thing that Purpose Over Pain what we do is support other parents that's like us. We offer support circles. We advocate for common sense gun measures, and we support young people. We mentor our young people. And then, since we're from the city of Chicago, I don't know, you've been following the news. I know on the national level, gun violence has been increasing. But in the city of Chicago, last year, we had over 4,000 people shot, 774 people dead. So we had to reach out to all of those parents, a lot of parents in Chicago. So I'm here today because despite the cold weather, violence is still increasing, not just in Chicago, but across America. Thank you for having me.
Wow, thank you so much for being here, Pam, and for giving us some of the insight into the work that you're doing, and more importantly, why you're doing it. Annette, would you like to go on ahead and introduce yourself next, please?
Sure. Good evening, everybody, and thanks, like Pam said, for joining us in this unusual manner. We'd rather be speaking to you in person, but at least we have this platform to actually introduce this. So, like Pam said, Purpose Over Pain, 2007, by a group of parents who suffered the most unimaginable loss there could be, and that's the loss of a child. Murder doing things, everyday things. So going to school, riding a bus, practicing at a church if you're in a band, getting ready for school, riding a bike, or even playing basketball. Blair was 16 when he was murdered. He was my only child. He was my everything, might I say. The one thing I always wanted to be was a mother. So when I had Blair, I was so happy. I was a fire captain. His dad was a TAC officer for the police department. So we both had really great jobs. We watched Blair, and we figured that if we kept an eye on him, he could be safe. This one day, May 10th of 2007, I was going to see The Color Purple with my sorority sisters, and Blair said, "Mom, I can take the bus home." And I said, "Okay, Blair, I'm not good with that, but I'll let you. Mom, I can do this." He gets on the bus, and with a group of high school students, it's a public bus, CTA, and a teenager gets on the bus and starts shooting wildly toward the back of the bus at another gang member. Well, Blair stepped in front of a young lady and saved her life, but he died as a result. And there were 5 teenagers who were shot that day, and Blair was the only one that died. You know, me and his dad, we know our jobs are heroic and we do things every day. We never expected that our child would have to be the hero in our lives and show us what it means to give your life unselfishly. So Blair was the average kid. He was very, very smart. Didn't want a lot of his friends to know how smart he was. He was a bookie. He liked to write poetry and music. He absolutely adored his grandparents. His granddad had Alzheimer's, and he stayed right under him. They even dressed alike. It was the cutest thing. And his other grandmother, he adored her as well, his dad's mother. He was full of life. He loved to dress. He was very handsome. So I had all kinds of girls coming at my son, and I was like, no, we're going to get education. And he was an honor student. All the teachers loved him and told me if they had more students like Blair, teaching would be easier. And I mean, that was the greatest salute to the young man that we raised ever. I can't tell you the hole it leaves in my heart, you know, losing my child, my best friend, my everything to me. But, you know, in spite of what he did, I figured I would tell him every day to do good when he went to school. And that's what he would do. He did good that day. And it is still painful. So I want to apologize for the love I have for my child.
Never. No need.
So with all that being said, we have this organization because we decided we would not give up in spite of what happened to our children. We would not let people forget what happens to children every day in the city of Chicago. Every day, there are numerous children being killed, just innocent victims of violence, not guns, not in gangs, not doing drugs, doing everything we asked them to do. And so we did this, and we even help parents plan funerals for their children and bury their children. We have plots that we give to families because they're not prepared to do this. This is the work Purpose Over Pain does. We speak to kids. We host activities to engage youth. We create ongoing support for families who still reach out even today, years later, because they need somebody to talk to. And as you can see, I need people to talk to myself. I talk to Pam all the time because I can lean on Pam. Even if that was my only child, she became a support for me, and I became a support for her. So Purpose Over Pain, we talked to many advocates in Washington, D.C., trying to change the gun laws. And I'll talk about that a little later. But Purpose Over Pain, we hope that, I know this sounds impossible, but I'm going to dream big, that we can eradicate gun violence. That's our goal in life, to let our purpose not overtake the pain that we've suffered. We want our purpose to be greater than our pain. That's really what this is. So thank you, everybody, for listening, and I'll get better. The introduction, talking about past tense, it really gets me. So just bear with me.
Yes, of course. All the space for you. Apologies not accepted whatsoever. That's why we have conversations like this. This is why we come together, because it is important that you emote, and it is important that you have the space to reflect. So thank you for your vulnerability and your willingness to talk in both past and future tense. I certainly honor you for that. So Debbie, if we could also please have you introduce yourself, please, and talk a little bit about the work that you do.
Thank you so much. First, I want to thank Pam and Annette for all that you do, reaching out to other survivors, helping them at their most traumatic time of their life, and to honor your boys. Jha D, if you and I could say their names out loud, and then if everybody can maybe in the chats put their names in there, their sons, because we never want to forget. And I think one of the most powerful things about the memorial is that it humanizes gun violence, and it's not just statistics. So if we could say Terrell and Blair.
Yeah.
Blair. So Pam and Annette, thank you so much. You're inspiring so many others, and you're saving lives by what you do. I joined Everytown for Gun Safety as managing director for organizing and engagement 3 years ago. Before that, I was with Mothers Against Drunk Driving for 15 years. So I'm a grief counselor by background, and I've worked with bereaved families for many, many years, whether their loved one was killed by a drunk driver or a drug driver. And then I came to Everytown for Gun Safety, and I never realized or thought of myself as a gun violence survivor. My dad That's the last picture taken of my father, my dad, about 6 weeks before he ended his life with a gun 11 years ago. His name was Don. And, for gun suicide survivors, many times we don't think of ourselves as gun violence survivors because it wasn't what someone did to my dad, but what my dad did to himself. And when I first joined Everytown, I thought, there's nothing non-violent about thinking about your loved one taking a gun and ending their life. And so 2/3 of the deaths every day are gun suicides. There's an increase in gun suicides and all types of gun violence during the pandemic. Gun sales are up historically more than ever before. And so it's been a real gift for me as a bereaved daughter to know that I can share my dad's story, and hopefully that makes a difference. But I'm so proud of the work with Everytown for gun safety, and that we have an Everytown survivor network with thousands of survivors that are volunteers in communities with Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action. We provide support to survivors, building a peer-to-peer connect program where we will match a survivor up with another survivor so that they have someone that they can call. We also have peer connect virtual support groups with hundreds of survivors participating in that. And then we also do a lot of workshops on how to share your story, how to talk to a legislator, how to advocate. And I really believe it is raising the voices of survivors and lifting their stories that really does make the difference, because it's hard to ignore if you're a legislator and you're advocating about a law and you're holding a picture of your loved one. This is not a number. This is my dad who's not with me any longer. These are families, Terrell, Blair, and we have to always remember ways that we can humanize the statistics of gun violence. And that's what's so impactful about the memorial. It is another way to do that.
Certainly. Thank you, Debbie. I know that Kathy said it a little early on in her introduction, but I want to reiterate the importance of how emotional and heavy this conversation can be. I think Annette introducing herself certainly reminded us of that. And so while we appreciate everybody for being here, and as Kathy said earlier, we encourage folks to reach out and make comments there in the Q&A. The formatting here, the chat has been disabled, so the engagement is going to have to happen to the Q&A. And so we appreciate those who have already offered such warm and comforting remarks there, and we certainly encourage that. And so while we look forward to having that level of dialogue, if anybody needs to step away for a moment to have a conversation with themselves, please do so as we're going through this presentation. I know we can't see you, but there is still some level of guilt when you step away from a Zoom presentation, and I don't want you all to have that. But I also want to extend that to the panelists as well. I do not want you all to feel as if you have to stay completely present here on the camera. If you need to come off the camera for a moment, if you need to go on mute for a moment, I don't know if that's appropriate as a moderator, but this is our panel, and so that's what we're going to do. We're going to prioritize self-care and taking care of ourselves through this conversation. So certainly do that. Again, thank you all for taking the time to introduce yourselves and to talk a little bit more about the work that you do, both as individuals and then, of course, as members and leaders of very important organizations that are doing necessary work across our communities. I do want us to, of course, have a conversation about what has happened in the gun violence space since we first opened this exhibition and what it means for us in this moment, but then, of course, what it means for us in the future as we go forward. So prior to doing that and getting into some of the questions, I do want to walk through a few photos of the memorial itself. One, to orient maybe those who have not yet seen the memorial, don't necessarily know a lot of information about it. And two, of course, to just remind ourselves of those of us who were involved in the process of what all took place. So for those that do not know, the Gun Violence Memorial Project is a space of remembrance in tribute to the thousands of lives that have been taken due to gun violence in America. The memorial features 4 houses comprising of 700 bricks each, and 700 is the average number of Americans who are taken due to gun violence every week in this country. I think it's also very important to say here, as you might have heard Kathy say earlier in her introduction, this project is really the result of love and labor from both Pam and Annette. And we must thank you all for your persistence and your dedication to wanting to create a space that not only honored your children, but the children and loved ones of so many. You all approaching Michael Murphy, one of our co-founders at the opening for the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, certainly changed our lives in a meaningful way. And I know through the conversations that we've had that this project has certainly changed yours. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be able to work with you all through this project. In our approach here for this project, we immediately were confronted by the thought of how do we represent the enormity of this epidemic? How do we represent the vastness while also being able to capture and acknowledge the intimate scale, the individual scale, and celebrate these lives, celebrate the individual people and their stories. And so we asked families who had loved ones who were taken due to gun violence to contribute a remembrance object in honor of that person. And we had these series of remembrance object events across the country, so that we had them in cities including Washington, D.C., Cincinnati, Boston, Chicago, a few others, where we would host over the course of 2 to 3 days collection events and invite family members through various networks and organizations to come share their story of their loved one, share the importance of why they thought it was necessary to contribute to this memorial, and then of course, contribute the actual object. In our ask, we encouraged families to give objects that represented the passions, interests, and personalities of the person that was being honored. And as a result, we received a wide range of objects. To be honest, did not know what to expect going into this project, going into our first few collection events, and I was completely overwhelmed and inspired and left emotional by the stories and the objects that people chose to represent their loved ones and the stories that were behind them. After we collected these objects from various family members in all of these cities across these events, we then took each individual object and placed it inside of a glass brick, displaying the name, year of birth, and year of death of the person that was being honored. Inside each house, as you step into the house, you can see here that these houses are occupiable. You are meant to walk through them. Inside of them, you can see the objects. You can take your time to absorb what was contributed on behalf of this person. And there's also an audio element to the experience as well. So as I mentioned, there were recordings at these object collection events where we asked people to share with us, why are you contributing this object? Why are you contributing to this memorial at all? Why do you think this is important? And we captured those both in video and in audio. And so you can hear some of those interviews as you're navigating through the houses in order to create a multi-sensory experience as you're visiting the houses. So as I said before, we do certainly hope that folks will have an opportunity to visit the National Building Museum in DC once the memorial is able to open, and we can all do so safely. With that, I would say to you three here, looking back on the exhibition, seeing these photos that I have here, answer for us, why did you feel that it was important to participate in the Memorial to Survivors? And tell us a bit about your role in bringing the project to life. And so I think, Debbie, we'll start with you, and then maybe Pam, we can have you jump in before we go to the next question.
Thank you, Jha D. Well, Everytown for Gun Safety is a partner for the Gun Violence Memorial Project. And, we really believe we can get laws changed, but how do we change the hearts and minds of people? And how do we change the culture and build a culture of safety and responsible gun ownership if you're a gun owner? And this is a way to visualize that. And as I look at the picture right here, the picture at the very top, it's a picture of one of the survivors in our own network, a mom from Houston whose son was murdered. And I visited the Memorial Project in Chicago in that fall, and I was taking pictures of the volunteer survivors that I knew had sent in, and I was texting them the pictures because not everybody could be there in person to see it, and it just meant so much to them. But I also think the memorials like this are also healing tools for survivors of gun violence too. Nobody wants anyone to forget about their loved one, or we always want to find ways that we can introduce our loved ones. And so through this, the culture change can really happen. The other thing that I think is important to note is that the memorial was designed through a survivor-driven process. So in those cities that you mentioned, we had volunteers who were survivors that were at locations collecting other survivors' keepsakes, memorials, because if you're a survivor and you give that away, you want to trust that it is going to be dealt with dignity and love and care. I have my dad's reading glasses right here that I want to be part of the memorial. I can remember my dad always sitting at the table, and it would be at the end of his nose. He was a farmer. Even on the tractor, he had his glasses on. And so, you know, survivors want to trust that when it goes to the memorial, it's going to be handled with that respect and that dignity. And so that's also very important. And it was a great way for survivors who are volunteering to also connect with other survivors as they were collecting those. And so it's just very survivor-centric. In the whole process from A to Z, from collection to the paperwork to the exhibition. And I also want to say, Jha D, I want to thank you so much for those words that you said to Pam and Annette about if anybody needs to take a break, because that's being trauma informed. And I would say also the development of the exhibit has also been very trauma informed, keeping in mind the needs and what survivors want and how it was handled. So thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you for that reflection. I must add there that most of our trauma-informed training came from our team there at Everytown. So I thank you for that gratitude, and I express it back to you. Pam, you go ahead and you jump in.
Yes. And Debbie, that's everything you said, I agree with. Art is a part of healing. And these houses, it gave us an opportunity to come together and actually own a house with our children's pictures in it. Since it was 4 different houses, actually, Sandy and Lonnie came to Chicago to see their daughter, Jessica, and she was in the same house. So we felt like the house was a place for our angels. And I just believe that the place, this is a place of healing. You had the videos playing with us telling our stories. And then we had the songs actually that Purpose Over Pain and some more people from Chicago made on behalf of their children. So it's a place of healing. And I was just grateful to be a part of it and to be able to accept other people, objects, memorial pieces, small shoes. It was just so much. And we, Purpose Over Pain, sometime when, after you all left, we decided to take in objects ourselves to continue to allow opportunities for parents to bring in different objects. And I'm hoping that, I know we're going to open back up in March and we're going to get through this COVID-19. I know so many people calling already to bring their memorial pieces. So I'm hoping that we continue to be a part of this and we be there to support other parents and allow them to bring something to this, to this memorial house. And it was a healing piece for me. It was emotional, it was bittersweet because, it's hard to just try to fit your son's life into a little small box. So what I did was I wanted to bring, Terrell loved Air Force Ones. He loved white ones, keep them clean. And, but his shoe was too big. So originally I brought it and I looked at the box, I'm like, it's not gonna make it. So what I did was I had to get creative. So I put together Terrell's little object. It has his drums, it has pictures of us because he loved his family. He loved Christmas, so you have a Christmas tree in there. He loved playing the bass guitar, so we got a picture of him playing his bass guitar. He was a football player. He loved driving, so I put a small picture of his license in there. Football, basketball, I was trying to fit everything into this box so people could understand that Terrell was not just another number with a tragic end. He was my son. And I needed people to understand that he lived, he had dreams, he was in college, he was doing all the right things, and gun violence ended his life. And that's why I'm so grateful that it's in DC, because we need these gun laws to change so other people like Terrell can fulfill their dreams.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I do remember you building your object contribution and coming back and forth, and will this fit, and can I add this, and what if I add this? So it was certainly beautiful to be able to guide you through that process and see what was the end result.
And Jha D, remember you all first originally had bigger boxes, but the Chicago Culture Center could not hold the boxes. So actually his shoe might would have fitted at first, but then after we had to, bring it down a little bit more. Well, he had a big foot too, so.
Something that was amazing to me going to the exhibit in Chicago, and I spent a few hours just walking around, really reading every single box and really looking at it, was it's in the middle of a museum. So there's lots of guests at the museum that they don't even know about the memorial until they're in the museum. And to watch people that maybe necessarily are not gun violence survivors reading it and seeing tears brought to people's eyes, right? I mean, you can just see the facial expressions. That's what really can, change behavior, right? And that really can cause the culture change, which is so important. Like, put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Nobody wants to get a knock on the door that their son has been murdered, right? Or a call that your loved one has died by suicide. No one wants to go through that. And so this is what really, again, can change those hearts and minds. I really believe that.
One thing too, we had it downtown in the center of Chicago. So it wasn't just on the south and west side, it was like in the center. So, because we wanted to bring attention that this is not just a south and west side of Chicago issue, it's a big issue. So put it in the center of Chicago.
Certainly. And I think what's also very important about some of what we're talking about here in relationship to the visibility, Debbie, that you're reflecting on in terms of, unexpected visitors coming in. And then Pam, you talking about the location, another layer of that was important to our design team, which includes all of you all as well, was to make sure that we were telling a very broad story about gun violence in this country. Currently, unfortunately, as the media might have it, some people have one idea of gun violence in their minds. Pam, you said it's not just the South Side, it's not just the West Side, right? And some people have a very narrow understanding of the gun violence epidemic in this country. And so for us, it was very important to make sure that we were doing enough outreach to reach families of various types of gun violence in this country. Debbie, you reflecting on, what it means to be a survivor of gun violence suicide, and how do we fold that conversation in to what we're doing here through this memorial work, I think was a very critical part of the work that we did, which was why we wanted to also include the videos, Pam, that you referenced, because in those videos, people were talking about exactly what happened to their loved one. And it really revealed, I think, for some of these unsuspecting visitors, how layered this epidemic is and how much it impacts every American, right? It is not reserved for one group of people. So I appreciate you all reflecting on that. And to that end, that kind of leads me into the next question that I had, because I feel like the object collection in and of itself was how we were able to achieve some of that. And so I mentioned before that we invited family members of gun violence victims to contribute objects that they felt like best represented their loved one. And for us as architects, as artists, we knew very early on that this project needed to be a collaborative one. We understood that as the designers, as the architects at the table, that we could only bring this memorial so far, meaning we wanted to create a framework by which families were able to tell their own story, as opposed to trying to step in and tell it for them. And so the houses are just that. They are but a framework. And without the participation and the contributions of their families, the memorial does not yet exist, right? You know, you have to start placing the objects in. We also, just as a frame of reference for folks who, again, aren't familiar with the project, we chose the form of the house for several reasons. One, it is a very inviting form. It is very recognizable. Debbie, you spoke about the folks that were walking through the cultural center, not expecting to come upon a memorial, but the form of the house is actually probably what invited them in. It was friendly. It was known to them. And so we started there with that form. But then also the form of the house represents a certain layer of domesticity to this epidemic, really helping people to understand that the gun violence epidemic begins and could end at home, right? This is a very personal narrative. This is us, and as a result, we can handle this. We can talk about this, and we can remedy this. And so, the objects themselves, as I said before, was a very important process. I was fortunate enough to be part of the process in many cities and heard firsthand a lot of these stories. But as survivors, Pam and Annette, and as those, Debbie, I'm sure you heard a lot of stories coming in from the Everytown team who helped really to shape and create this memorial process. I want to hear from you all why you think that the collection of these items from families was important and what it means to you to know that families are able to co-create this memorial in all of its various phases. And so Annette, I think we should probably hear a little bit from you there first, and then we can go to whomever else wants to contribute.
Jha D, can I go back? I didn't get to answer the last question. The last one, I just wanted to say, because I had some things I wanted to give to Michael Murphy, because we hadn't said exactly how that happened and how we went to the opening for the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. It's more of a lynching, and that's a word that I say because that's what it was, and mass created it. And so Pam and I saw it, and we were so moved in Montgomery, Alabama, that we found out that the design team, Michael Murphy and Mass Design, were going to be at a breakfast that morning, and we made it there. And we had the opportunity at the end. We waited and waited, and we got to him, and we told him our stories and how we had wanted to do some type of memorial in Chicago because of all the gun violence and how we had mass shootings every day in the city. And we just wanted people to know how bad it is, not just to be sad, but to move to action. So Mike listened to us, and he actually called us, and I was really surprised. He actually did what he said he would do. And I think so much credit needs to go to Michael Murphy for listening to us and the Mass Design team for actually helping put this together for purpose over pain, for one, and for everyone. It's not just purpose over pain. This is for everyone. So it's everyone's exhibit to do something. And also to bring gravity to the issue and the personal items that everybody contributed to this exhibit. But the thing is, art is beauty. And by art being something that shows beauty, it can also bring attention and cause discussion. And I think this exhibit does exactly that. Looking at all and the gravity of all the young people, because there's so many, it's babies in there and it's older people in there as well. But mostly it looks like it's more teenage years, anywhere from like 16 up to about 30. When you get to a 30, you see a lot of young people here and you wonder, what are we doing here? What are we doing wrong? And what can we do better or do right to make this go away? Because this shouldn't be what the narrative is for most communities or for anybody. You shouldn't have to worry about being killed. And this exhibit does exactly that. It brings discussion. Even though it seems like a horrible thing, it's actually a beautiful thing. Like Pam said, it shows that these were people's lives and they are no longer here on earth with us because of a gun. And I think all of us on here and anybody else, we need to find ways to do something different to make sure that this doesn't become a reality of everyday life, because gun violence is going through the roof right now, even with COVID. So we have to figure out ways to help change this. We got to be better than this.
Yes, yes. Thank you. And also thank you for stepping back to the previous question, because I do think that that story is important to share and to talk about. Debbie or Pam, did you all want to talk a little bit about why you thought it was important, to have the memorial creation process go the way that it went, and why, you were honored to be able to help shape that through the collection of the objects?
Sure, I'll say something. I was honored because here in Chicago, we have a memorial that's in front of St. Sabina with just pictures that's on the south side of Chicago. So we knew that we needed something bigger and better. So I'm just grateful to Mass Design and to Michael Murphy for creating this piece. And not only that, when you walk through it, you can look from the outside and look in, because it's glass rocks. So that's the beauty of it. And like Annette said, that I'm hoping that, with the increase in violence, that this move people to action. And that's the goal. And that's why you're moving it around to not just, it was here in Chicago, now it's in DC, and you have plans to move it other places, but we hoping that at the end we find a spot in Chicago for one of the houses. And the goal is to have houses all around, just because, and I know some parents was skeptical. They was afraid of giving their objects because, that's all we have. We just have, these are memory pieces, and it is hard to give it up, even if it's a sock, it's a hat, because you feel as though that you can't get it back. But one thing that you all did, Mass Design, Jha D, you all told people as it moved, if you wanted it back, you can have it back. You gave them that option. So while I was sitting in Chicago, it's some people put their objects there. Then when they moved to DC, they didn't feel comfortable to let it go. And you gave them that option to take it back. And then if they want to send it again, when you open it up, they can. So, I appreciate that. But, it's amazing. I love it. And I'm just grateful that you all did this and put this together, because we do need to stop this gun violence, and it needs to go where you're taking it to DC, because we have a new president, and we need the president and our state reps to make this a top priority, because we have to bring this gun violence to an end.
Yes, we are going to get into that in the next question, but I want Debbie to have an opportunity.
I just want to say, because we had different locations that we had volunteers and we were collecting them, but it was just great conversation, right? So there were so many survivors who were like, well, what should I give? Like going through, like, should I give my glasses? Should I give my dad's fishing reel? And then when you're talking about memories and mementos, you might be crying thinking about it and talking about it, or you might be laughing about stories about certain things too. And so for me, and I love, Annette, what you said about art is beautiful, and this memorial is beautiful. And the mementos are beautiful, but again, it is a healing. It helps to provide healing, and I think that's what's so powerful about it too, is the healing aspect of it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for reflecting on that. It was a very cathartic experience for everybody involved. And as you said, family members coming in with bags of options of what they actually wanted to gift to the memorial or loan to the memorial. As Pam said, there are folks who decided, I'm only going to loan it for this city, and after this city, I would like to have it back. Very powerful, transformative conversations happening over, the transformation of taking what might have seemed as just an everyday, ordinary object and transforming that into a quite beautiful momentum, something that, is meant to honor a loved one in a very expansive way. Before we jump to the next question, I do want to just speak a little bit more broadly to the audience here today and say that if you are interested in learning about the future collections, the Remembrance Object Collections events, please send us an email at participate@massdesigngroup.org. Do not worry about writing that down. I will have a screen at the end today for you all to be able to pull that information. Unfortunately, at this time, due to the uncertainty of COVID, we cannot yet predict when we are going to open back up collection. However, as soon as we do, that information will be put on the Gun Violence Memorial Project.org website. And then, of course, if you are already affiliated and associated with a survivor network, I'm pretty sure between our connections, those at Purpose Over Pain and those at Everytown for Gun Safety, you will receive that information. We will do our due diligence to disseminate it effectively once we are able to re-engage in the collection. If you are interested in already thinking of contributing an object, again, if you go to the Gun Violence Memorial Project.org website, there is some criteria that explains to you exactly what types of objects will and can be accepted. There are a few constraints and limitations that we ask folks to review, and there's also a form, but I can answer questions about those if people have them. And as I said before, at the end, I will give you all a slide that has all of that information. So don't feel like you have to write it all down right now. So back into the questions. Pam, you started to get there, so we probably will start the answer to this question with you and go with the other folks. But as you said, or we both have said, the memorial has now moved to Washington, D.C. We were first able to open and exhibit it at the Chicago Architecture Biennial back in 2019. And we were overwhelmed with the invitation from the National Building Museum to bring it to D.C. We do have plans to bring it to other cities and partner with other institutions in order to host the houses, but it is currently now and soon to open in Washington, D.C., which is our nation's capital, at the seat of power in the U.S. And I guess, we want to have a conversation about why is it important to you all individually or for your organization for the exhibition to be brought here? What is important about Washington, D.C.? Why now? And so Pam, you started there, and I just want you to be able to keep going a little bit.
Okay, good. I'm grateful we have a new president. So let's start there. So we need President Biden to make gun violence a top priority, because gun violence, it should be put under categories public health crisis. So that means when it's underneath that title, people invest into it. And we need it to be, at the top. We need urgency. We need, just like we working with COVID-19 and, people are dying from there, people are dying from gun violence. So we need that to be a top priority. And unfortunately, at the rate that we're going now, I know here in Chicago and on the national level, it's increasing. Everybody's going to know somebody who was either shot or somebody who was killed by gun violence. So I'm just hoping that now that, we have a new president, that we able to, that we can bring it to the table now and get some bills passed and get some things changed in all communities. That's it for me.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Annette, you want to jump in there? Or Debbie, go ahead. I see you unmuted yourself.
Go ahead,
Sure.
Annette. Oh, go ahead, Annette.
Okay, I was going to say, I know I've been to Washington many times with Pam, with other parents. We've talked to a lot of legislators, and it's very ironic that now we're in Washington, D.C. with an exhibit that actually shows what we've been trying to tell them for a long time. Gun violence is another pandemic. It's worse. It should be declared a national health crisis, because it is. It's costing so much money in communities, especially communities of color, because it is a burden for us to have to take care of all the things that happen outside of this. Once gun violence is done, it's not really done, because you leave a community traumatized. You leave communities devastated. The problem is we need laws enacted, especially in communities where guns are easily accessible in the hands of people who should not have them. It's easier for people to get guns in my community than it is to get a good education, a hot meal, a good place to live that's safe. It's easier. And that's horrible. This is America. Other countries look up to us to be the lead. We are not leading the way here, except we're leading the way in the wrong direction as far as guns and gun violence. I'm not saying the Second Amendment right is not valid. I'm just saying guns should never be in the hands of people who should not have them. The mentally ill, felons, anybody who, or domestic abusers, they should not have guns, because we open up the door for things that can happen. And I mean, we can't anticipate how great it's going to be. People think, oh, I'm selling a gun to a person who's going to shoot another gang member. It doesn't work like that. It's usually innocent victims who are victims of violence. And I just think that we have to do something better. We have to drive economics into communities to build them up and to really rehabilitate the communities in order to stop gun violence. It's a approach that's not just getting legislation passed, but we have to have better schools, better housing, better places to eat, healthy communities. And we have to have some type of trauma-informed care, because behind all of this is a trail of trauma, and who knows where that's going to lead as these young people and as all of us keep getting re-traumatized every time we hear about another mass shooting or just an everyday shooting in Chicago, because it's a mass shooting here every day, believe me. So I think we have to look at a lot of different things. And I think not a better place than Washington, D.C. for the legislators. I invite them to please visit this exhibit, look at the pictures, look at the ages of these people. They start, like I said, from babies to grown people. And look what it is. You see people in military uniforms. They go serve our country. They come home, they get gunned down and killed in the street. This is not the America we're supposed to be. We can do better than this.
Well, you know, it's interesting, too, when you think about Washington, D.C., there's two perspectives that are critically important when we talk about the memorial and gun violence. Number one, yes, we have a new president, vice president. This is an important issue that they've talked about, but we also have a majority in the House and we have a majority in the Senate. And so this is like the time to get something done at the federal level. But also Washington, D.C. for a city has one of the highest homicide rates of a city in the country. And just last week, Mayor Bowser of Washington, D.C. announced the creation of a gun violence prevention director position as part of the D.C.'s public safety team, the first time. And I know that our volunteers with Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action in D.C., working with local GVP partners, have really called on city officials to create a Vision Zero for gun violence in D.C. And so, you know, the advocacy days are going to happen. And so this is just the ideal time, the prime time to have this exhibit in Washington, D.C. from both a federal and for a city level as well.
Certainly. I think, of course, I agree with all of that. And I think for us, you know, as a design team and as folks who have been working on this project now for almost 2 years, I'll back up a bit and I'll just say that the inspiration for this project was the NAMES project, which is also known as the AIDS quilt, which I'm sure everybody has probably seen very beautiful images of, just completely covering the National Mall. And in that, we were inspired by this notion of, as I said before, representing the enormity while also honoring the individual and the ways in which the NAMES quilt was able to do that. And I think with that, we also understood that throughout history, anytime, you know, there's a necessary movement and a position needs to be taken and we want to speak truth to power, there are demonstrations, very peaceful demonstrations that happen in DC. That's where you go. That's where you go to start the conversation, to make some noise. And so for us, we see this really as an opportunity, Pam, as you mentioned, to take the power of art and scale it up by the location of the nation's capital, especially given where we currently are in this political climate. So could not agree with all of those statements anymore. So with that, I do want to open it up for question and answers with our audience here. I want to make sure that if people have specific questions for any one of our amazing panelists, that they have an opportunity to ask them. I don't want to leave that opportunity out for folks. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A button. You should be able to find the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or perhaps it's maybe off to the top right if you're joining us from a cell phone. But yes, please put in your question and answer so that we can address them. I do have one here now about the dates for the museum and how long it will be there at the museum. And I do not have specific dates for you all just yet. A lot of our intentions are being guided by COVID, but we are anticipating being able to open up in mid-March. As soon as we have a solid date with the National Building Museum, we will post it on the gunviolencememorialproject.org website. So please do check back there. Also, if you are associated with or following organizations such as Purpose Over Pain or Everytown for Gun Safety on their social media websites, once the memorial is open, I'm sure there will be some promotion and notification there.
Jha D, it's Kathy from the Building Museum. I want to let everyone know the show will be up, or the memorial will be up for at least a year once we open.
Yes.
So don't panic about getting here right away to DC when COVID is still happening. It will be up for quite a long time. So I hope everybody can come see us.
Yes, thank you, Kathy, for jumping in for the second half of that question. Certainly very important, because we do not want folks flooding to DC in a week thinking they have a short window. Another question that I have here, this is for you, Pam and or Annette, Pam and Annette, and I think it's a good question. I'm excited to see the answer here. It says, how did you know that you needed a physical memorial, and what have you learned about design throughout this process, this journey that you've been on with our team now for the past year and a half?
Okay, I thought about a physical memorial after consistently seeing so many people being killed in Chicago. And I was like, people have to see the gravity of the amount of people that are not just being shot, but being killed, because it's two things. And I thought that if we could possibly, before we even met Michael, Pam and I talked about this. How do we get some type of memorial? Because maybe our state legislators, maybe our city legislators would see how bad this is. Because right now you hear about one person here, one person there, you miss the news and you don't hear about other people. But for somebody like me who gets data, I get data because of my job, and I see the numbers, I was just like, this is unbelievable. And I just thought it was it was appropriate to have something that would just show, because like art, we talk about art, visuals are greater than anything at showing people what's going on. If you just tell somebody, they can't even relate to it. But if we start showing you what it looks like, you start going, oh my God, this is a bigger problem than ever. So I think working with mass design, you guys did all the hard work. We just said, yes, no, we like it. You guys did all the hard work. And I can just say how impressed, how honored, how grateful. I could not tell you enough how much we appreciate you guys doing what you did for us, because you didn't have to do it. I tell you, Michael, phenomenal. Who meets two ladies screaming about their children, showing them pictures. Now, I wasn't crying then, but I think Michael was crying.
Yes, you was crying too.
Well, it was raining out. It was raining. So anyway, but who does that? That made me know that there is still good in this world, because we talked to a lot of people that told us they would do something and they didn't do anything. And this man met us one time, and he designed it. He came and met us. We met the team. We fell in love. We became family. So that's what I can say about this process.
And ditto, Annette. Yeah, but too, the physical memorial, we had one in Chicago, a small one, like I said, in front of St. Sabina with just the kids' pictures on it. And but it's not just a Chicago issue. We meet people all the time, because we travel a lot with to different places speaking. So everybody needs to have an opportunity so they can understand that this is not just even though it's like 127 cities in the nation that this is happening to, but it's a problem. So it's happening everywhere, but it's like 127 cities that is happening to more, and that's the Black and brown communities. But we want to bring light to what's taking place, and we want people to put some action behind it to make changes. So that's why. But Mass, I wouldn't that I agree. Meeting you all was amazing. Michael, so true. We told our story to him, and he opened his heart, and he called us back. And me and Annette, we travel a lot. We always talking about our children because that's all we have. We talk about Terrell, we talk about Blair all the time. And of course, I talk about my other two sons too, but I talk about Terrell in the past, and that hurts. But, just to have somebody step up and do something, not just for our children, but for everybody else, is amazing. We truly thank you, Mass and Jha D. You all amazing. You all amazing. And then you all let us put a little input into it. We appreciate that. And then we know too, this is the first project that you all had to do on your own and raise money for it. Usually people donate and give you money to put together projects. So you all had to come up and be creative and reach out to funders on your own. And, just make sure this project was built and put together well. And we thank you for that, for taking, the time to do what you did. So I just want to say we truly appreciate it, and we thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Yes, and Pam, for that, trying to raise money to keep this memorial going either.
Yes, keep raising money, please, because that's how you're going to get it. I saw somebody ask, can they come to Detroit? Mm-hmm. It can go anywhere you want to go as long as they have money. So we need donations. That's the key part. This is not a free project. It's expensive. So we need donations so this can continue. Unfortunately, it's so many people that can, so we could have filled this up in Chicago, but it's so many people. I mean, it's needed. So we want you all to donate to this project because we need it.
Right. Thank you both for reflecting. Go ahead, Debbie. I see you unmuted yourself.
No, I just think it's so poignant that we're having this conversation and talking about the memorial tonight, and because this is National Gun Violence Survivors Week, mm-hmm. right? And this is the third year to honor survivors during this week. We should honor survivors every single day, not just this week, but this is the opportunity to really raise awareness. And I just wanted to say, too, that we have a website called momentsthatsurvive.org, where survivors can go and post a story and a picture, because this is another way of healing, too, to be able to do that online. And there's all different types of gun violence survivors. There's homicide, there's suicide, there's unintentional shootings, there's victims that are in a DV situation with gun shootings, or those who witness. And so it's just a really great way to create this community of survivors virtually, which we're all a little tired of the virtual world. We miss hugs in person, but we got to do what we can to connect people virtually as well. So momentsthatsurvive.org.
Yes, thank you for including that. Very important resource for those that are looking to find out more about the work that you're doing, and also find out more about some of these personal stories that people are willing to share. Kathy, I see you've come on to.
Yeah, I just wanted, if we're done with questions, are there any more or sort of?
There are 1/2 more questions that I'm just going to answer very briefly, and then I will pass it over to you. So there's some questions about the project in and of itself, and I see that somebody has asked about whether or not the number of bricks have increased, and then also folks are asking about where is the project going next and how do they get it to their city. So very broadly, I just want to say that the opening at the Chicago Architecture Biennial, bringing it to DC, these are some of the initial phases of this project. Ideally, we will be able, and when I say we, I mean a very large team of folks, not just we at Mass Design Group and our partners, St. Louis Thomas, but broader community that's working in the gun violence space. We will be able to work towards more national and permanent versions of this memorial. That's probably 5-6 years down the line here, and I can't necessarily speak to the specifics of that, but we certainly intend and plan to continue to grow this memorial. So the question about the bricks, they have not yet increased, if you will. The 4 houses are not full. And so we are still collecting objects to that end to fill the existing 4 houses. As I said before, 1 house represents a week. And so the collection of them is a month to represent the statistics of gun violence in this country over a month's span. And then in terms of where it goes and where you'll see it next, that's ultimately up to some of our project partners. And as we're able to identify more project partners and partner institutions and organizations that are willing to work with us to host the houses in their various buildings and places, and also as we're able to continue to fundraise for this project and gain the support of philanthropic dollars, then we will have some more clarity about where the project is going next. Our office is based in Boston, and I'm a resident born and raised in Boston, and so I have hopes of eventually bringing it to my home city, as I'm sure everybody wants to see it in their respective cities. But again, I cannot stress enough, please keep yourselves updated on our website for the project, which is gunviolencememorialproject.org. You can also follow Purpose Over Pain, Everytown for Gun Safety, or Mass Design Group / the Gun Violence Memorial Project on social media platforms, primarily Instagram, in order to stay updated. But as we have more details, we will certainly be sharing them far and wide.
And Jha D, before you close, I'm sorry, I just want to say you can find us at purposeoverpain.net. Okay, and then our phone number, just in case you want to reach us, is 773-234-8117, but that's purposeoverpain.net. Thank you.
And we also have a Facebook page, Purpose Over Pain.
Purpose Over Pain Facebook page.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much to all of you, Debbie, Pam, Annette, and Jha D, for participating today and for sharing your stories. And thank you for all of you who are not on the screen. Your faces are not on the screen because I am seeing in the Q&A. I'm so grateful to the names that you shared of your loved ones and the stories that you shared. You have moved me to action. I hope others feel the same way. We look forward to welcoming you to the museum when we open. This exhibition is free of charge. It's not part of our regular admission because we do not want any impediment for anyone who wants to come see this. So we look forward to welcoming you all. Like I said, it's up for a little while, so you will have plenty of time. But thank you all for your time tonight. And just to let you know, the program has been recorded. We'll be doing a little bit of editing and putting it up online in about 10 days. So if you have friends or family who couldn't join tonight, please encourage them to watch the program because this is so important to us. We're so excited to have this in Washington, D.C. We hope our lawmakers come and see it. We will open our doors wide for our lawmakers so we can change the laws and try to eradicate this, as you said, Annette. Look forward to that. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Thank you.